if I can collect millions of dollars from hotel owners for a living, how hard it can be, to simply book meetings. Turns out it was it was a bit hard. It wasn't as easy. I am learning everything, so that means that's a point where I'm able to share my success, failure, everything what I'm doing with my team, and that's the way they are kind of able to respect me. I'll give you an example. We were at a conference in Vegas, I think a couple of years ago. And one of my SDR who was 6'4", 6'5". And all the people who were around us, we were all senior people, like 30, 35, 40. And what he pulled off, I could not have pulled off. He booked 5 meetings on the spot. Now, an experienced SDR would probably think, oh, you know what, I can always email them later. I can do all the traditional stuff. So what I usually look for is the deep, insane amount of hunger. And if they have anything to prove, anybody can say that I have hunger, but do they have any stats? Do they have anything which they can use to prove?
Because let's face it, getting on the phone and calling strangers isn't fun. Most people think of it as like it's daunting. So you want that to be less daunting so someone that has faced much more challenging things in their life. So cold calling is not that difficult.
So I can start with as simple as even helping them understand how School of SDR operates, as an example. Funny thing, to explain the concept of ICP, I take B2C example. So I bring up my old iPod, I have an MP3 player, which I got as a gift recently. And I asked them, hey, you know what, in the world of Spotify today, who would need this? Someone in my family said that nobody believed that I could even start, and nobody thought, I could actually start with my own business. I could do this for hours and hours and hours without even thinking about it. I could teach this in my sleep. I'm very much against studying MBA and, going to B school for 2 years just to learn this. I think the best way to learn this is learning on your own.
Welcome to Prospecting Pros. And on today's show, we have Rahul Wadwa. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John, for inviting me. Nobody really invites me.
Let's start with a little bit of background on you. That's how I like to start every show. So you're very advanced in your career. I looked on your LinkedIn. You had something like almost 20 different experiences. Don't have to go through all of them, but walk us through beginning your career and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I've got a very diverse background. I started as a bartender, then an executive housekeeper in a 250-room property in Fort Worth, Texas. Then I worked in customer care. Then I worked in B2B collections before I started my career as an SDR. And the inflection point for me was if I can collect millions of dollars from hotel owners for a living, how hard it can be, to simply book meetings. Turns out it was a bit hard. It wasn't as easy. However, I think I kind of had a good run where I think I was in the right place at the right time. I wanted to become an account executive early in my career, just like any other SDR. But luck as I had it, I had a great boss who probably realized the potential I had as a coach and promoted me to a leader. I built the first team, and after that, there was no looking back. And I think the best decision ever. And I think when I realized it, when I first became the leader, there was not much of a coaching given to me, much of a coaching around which I could purchase, And so I thought, I'm going to probably do something one day. And I had a kind of a vision that I will become a coach. And given my coaching background I had as a trainer at American Express, that kind of came in handy. And one fine day, I started School of SDR with the help of my other co-founder. And today we are probably the number one SDR ecosystem where we do a lot of stuff under the SDR hood.
How long ago did you start that?
We started about 3 years ago, but I went full-time 2 years ago.
And tell us more about that. How do people get started with that? What do you do? What do you walk people through? How does it all work?
Sure. We are primarily aimed at individuals who are trying to break into tech SaaS, but at the same time, we also work with a lot of SDRs who are trying to upskill. We are working with companies who are trying to train and upskill their team. Since I said we are the SDR ecosystem, we also provide any kind of hiring. We also have plans to soon roll out the GTM advices so that we can have people who can advise other startups as they're growing. And then we are also introducing tools people can actually go and check out. And these tools are all recommended, not something, which I'm finding off the net, something which I'm using personally, which I believe in, where I believe in these products. We also are the only SDR platform in India, or I would say ecosystem in India, where we have published the benchmarking. So we have all the data in terms of, how much to pay, at the same time, what kind of tools are companies using, the challenges and whatnot. So we are kind of deeply rooted, if you might say, in understanding the entire ecosystem. And we are focused on one thing and one thing only, selling to the US.
And for anyone listening, how does it work exactly? Like, is this a free community? Is it paid? How does it work?
No, I don't do free. So it's a paid program. in which SDRs pay a certain amount, and our pricing is pretty public. And they undergo an intensive, very intensive 4-week program in which they spend about 40 hours, up to 48 hours, for 40 hours attending 3 classes a week. And we bring a lot of technology. We have our own technology to help them practice cold calling. The reason our program works, the reason our programs works far better than anybody else is, one, I'm a operator right now. I'm a B2B SaaS founder myself. That means whatever I'm teaching from what I'm learning, from what I'm doing. Not something which I used to do 2-3 years ago. I am learning everything. So that means that's a point where I'm able to share my success, failure, everything what I'm doing with my team. And that's the way they are kind of able to respect me. Then I'm able to work with them. I'm able to motivate them. We work on multiple levels, where if I look at the kind of success stories we have built in the past, some of my SDRs have got promoted in 9 months, 12 months, 2 promotions in 18 months. Some of them are working at the hottest tech startups of the world, like Rippling, 𝐼𝐸, Story. I don't think so anybody, especially in India, has any kind of claims like that. Nobody even comes close. And I don't mean to sound like I'm boasting, but in a way, yes.
Well, I think that's very important because it's challenging to hire SDRs, right? You have to go through all the interview process. You have to train them. And there's unfortunately in the space, there's lots of churn for various reasons. And if someone can go and understand that someone's gone through your program and they've been trained, it's a much higher chance that they're going to be experienced, like have expectations on what to do, and also that they're going to last longer. I mean, I guess that's the idea behind it all. So I think there's huge benefits there for anyone looking for an SDR out of India.
Yeah. And I think the way I kind of pitch this to companies is I ask them, okay, you're going to hire somebody with experience. I get that, that actually kind of gives you the comfort. This person knows the job. How would you check for mindset? Because you don't know, one, how to do that. Second, what worked for their previous company. You don't know if that's going to work for, your company or not. So you're basically purely hiring because of a name tag or because of somebody coming with an experience. The next question I ask founders or leaders who are hiring for experience is, hey, how confident you are that this experienced person you're hiring has invested even 5 hours of time in the last 1 year. While the SDR I'm training, they have invested like money, resources in every shape, form or possible. Some of them have quit their full-time job so that they can become a full-time B2B SDR, invested over 40 hours of training in 1 month. One of my SDR who got hired yesterday, he beat somebody who came with 2 years of experience because of that.
I want to touch on this because I face this too. There's people that are experienced, people that are not experienced, but that doesn't mean one's going to outperform the other. So there's experienced people likely will, but there's also some people that I've hired over time that have come from different backgrounds, whether it's sports or teachers, and they've performed very well. What is it that you see in successful SDRs and personality traits? Like you've had probably a bunch of people go through your program. What stands out in terms of the successful SDRs?
I think there is a place for experience. There is a place for you to hire somebody who comes with a different background altogether. I have done both in different stages of the companies, if I might say. And I remember I've hired somebody in the past in 2019 who had a 1 year gap because he was backpacking. And during the interview, we did not talk anything about sales. I simply asked him about what did he do during the backpacking, the kind of experiences he learned. He turned out to be one of my best SDRs. He had an analytical mind. Eventually, he moved to RevOps. He's one of my best friends right now. I've hired Gen Zs who have turned out to be the most amazing SDRs I've worked with because they came up with a certain point of view, a different tangent, which I was not even able to even think about. I'll give an example. We were at a conference in Vegas, I think a couple of years ago, and one of my SDR who was 6 feet, I think 6 feet 5, and all the people who were around us, we were all senior people, like 30, 35, 40, and what he pulled off, I could not have pulled off. We were hosting our booth in a different setting, and we had an enterprise booth where all the enterprise customers were kind of roaming around. We were allowed to roam, but we were not allowed to host a booth, of course. So what he did is he went to Home Depot, I don't know, Home Depot or Staples. He got a board. He put our company name on it. And we had a bunch of Starbucks $10 gift card, and we were giving it to everybody who was ready to talk to us. Because he was tall, he was literally roaming in the entire floor. Hey, I'll give you $10 if you talk to me. He booked 5 meetings on the spot. Now, an experienced SDR would probably think, oh, you know what, I can always email them later. I can do all the traditional stuff. But this is something only person who can do this is who comes with a chip on the shoulder. Somebody who has to prove himself constantly. Sure, after an experience, I believe that kind of feeling would go away. But I believe, I come from that same mindset where I believe I have to prove everything every single day. So I kind of wake up with that mindset because I don't know. I mean, I just kind of believe in that whole concept of, if you've seen the movie, the documentary Playbook, where they host all the best coaches of the world, football team, cricket team, basketball team. And I think one of the quote I believe which sticks with me is, when you're on the top of the mountain, the air is very thin and you have to kind of maintain that. So top players usually always maintain that. So what I usually look for is the deep, insane amount of hunger. And if they have anything to prove, anybody can say that I have hunger, but do they have any stats? Do they have anything which they can use to prove? I remember, and I still hire for a lot of companies. I'm in the final rounds. And I think one thing where I even reject these experienced folks is some of them have become very complacent. Some of them comes with an entitlement that, hey, they have served their time for 2 years. Now they're looking for the next gig. And it's only a matter of time before they become impatient and then they will leave. So if I'm looking for the longevity, I'm looking for somebody who will stay. And because every company would want their SDR to stay. So that insane hunger, and it's not displayed through words, it's displayed throughout the conversation.
The hunger part is also how long does it last? Because I could be hungry for 1 month, but how long does it last? Is it going to last 6 months? Is it going to last 1 year? And so I think that lasting hunger, what we look for is some type of you want grit, but some type of challenge they've had to overcome, whether that's maybe an addiction or maybe it's sports, maybe it's health, something that they've had to overcome. Because let's face it, getting on the phone and calling strangers isn't fun. Most people think of it as it's daunting. So you want that to be less daunting so someone that has faced much more challenging things in their life. So cold calling is not that difficult. Also, just I think the natural ability to carry a conversation. Are they conversational? Is it easy to flow and have that conversation with that person, which I think translates to cold calling. But you want to be careful that you're not just having a conversation, and it ends up being a 20-minute call, right? There has to be direction within the conversation. So that
I think I've kind of realized that. I had another rep, which, when you said about holding a conversation for the sake of holding. I remember this SDR, great SDR. I think he could have done really great, but he did not, because he was so attached to having these conversations. He started enjoying the conversation so much that he's having these 30-minute cold calls, and sometimes these conversations are not going anywhere, and you realize that in 5 minutes, and he's the only one not meeting the quota while having the most conversations. So tweaking that, I think your point is bang on. Tell me something. I mean, you said that how you're looking for people who can hold these conversations. How do you judge them? Just based on how they're conversing with you, or are you looking for anything in particular which is probably not visible to the naked eye?
So for us, we require a video application just before. It's like a way of filtering these things out. We're looking for native English speakers. Believe it or not, there's a bunch of people, no matter how clear you make it, will apply even though they're not native English speakers. So it's one way of filtering them out. But it gives us a sense on how do they sound. Just before we are going to set up an interview, I just want to know, how do they sound? How do they carry themselves? How do they talk about themselves in their past? So that's step number one. Step number two is an actual interview. So having that interview, asking questions, how does it flow? Do they seem experienced, or are they kind of just bullshitting their way through the interview? And the step after that is we hold mock calls. So that's thinking on their feet, because they're not going to have a ton of experience in what they're selling, right? So how can they explain things on their feet with limited knowledge in what they're actually selling? So that's our process. It certainly worked, because before, over time, we used to not do the mock call, and that was a mistake. So I think we hired more people, some bad hires over time. You quickly realize that once they start onboarding. So that helps filter people out as well. Now I have a question. We use a tool called Fireflies to help with meeting recordings, not for SDRs, for internal purposes. But they recently rolled out something with an AI agent, and we're just in the beginning phases of testing it, but it'll allow us to have applicants talk to the AI agent. And I'm assuming we're going to get the recordings back, and it'll analyze what they're saying. Have you come across anything like this, or any experience with a tool like that for interviewing? This is SDRs specifically.
No, I have no idea. I honestly did not have any idea that they came up with that. What's the purpose? Is the sole purpose is to avoid meetings so that, somebody whom you're interviewing can have a chat with the agent? Is that the whole idea?
The idea is, so instead of setting up, the SDR manager's time is limited. or whoever the hiring manager is. So it's like to filter them out and have a sense on how they are, how they're performing. I don't know how the scoring system works because we're just in the beginning stages, but the idea is that you're getting the recording as well as them answering questions before you spend your time to actually set up the interview.
Wow. And so I'm assuming you'll have to feed the agent what kind of question to ask and train the agent to some certain extent where it can, to an extent, behave like you.
Yeah. So they have a standard one for the SDR position that comes with questions, but you can customize it however you want. So
that's pretty cool.
I can report back because I don't have much feedback, but I like
Sure.
I like the concept.
No, I think the concept could be great. It can certainly be helpful if you're hiring for multiple positions, and if you have multiple applications, I think it could be something.
So when you were describing your background, question came up, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I do want to ask now. You were talking about how you were an SDR and you had a really good manager who, rather than having you go the route of being an AE, got you going into the SDR manager and being a coach. What did he see in you? What were the traits? Why? I think this is important because a lot of people are in this SDR role. They want to grow within the company. But does that mean be an AE? Does that mean be an SDR manager? What is it? Why do you think he saw that you should be a coach?
Quite interesting question. No one has ever asked me that before. That what did he see in me? So I'm also kind of reminiscing and thinking about this as I speak. I think first thing I want to talk to anybody who's watching this or listening to this, if you're an SDR, most of you kind of believe that, you want to become an account executive because that's where you believe the more money is. And I don't doubt that, but hear me out for a second. Not all of you would have the ground to become a great account executive. That means you will have to figure out a way. Some companies will not have a promotion path. I used to believe the same, that if I become an account executive, I'll be able to make more money, close deals, because that's how we all grew up with, right? Watching Wolf of Wall Street, because that's where the money is. I used to shadow a lot of my account executives. I think one of the things which I learned, and I learned this the hard way, John. Back at American Express, I was due for a promotion as a trainer, and I did not get that promotion. And the reason I did not get the promotion is not because I did not have the skills, but I did not have the right PR skills. I think for that role, there was an immense need for me to develop that skill, and I never developed that during that time. And I kind of lost it fair and square. Somebody who got it had better PR skills. I had more knowledge. I had better presentation skills and everything. Did not get it. So fair. I think, but one lesson which I learned from that is I will never lose a promotion. Never. No matter what, I will never lose a promotion in my life. So I learned everything I could, how people get promoted. And one of the things which I learned from my other boss is, by the way, I've been blessed with all the great bosses in the world. So everybody's kind of teaching me something. So one thing he taught me is you need to learn how to market yourself. It doesn't really matter. Numbers are the last thing which matters when it comes to promotion. And that was like a kick in the nuts I needed. That sure, I had great numbers, but somebody who got the promotion did not have great numbers. So clearly that was not the case. At the time when I was an SDR, I think one of the things which I did is every time I would meet somebody from another department, I will ask them how they're doing, and I will make sure they know how well I am doing. So if I'm meeting my CEO at a water cooler, I will ask them how's the company.
This episode is sponsored by LevelUp Leads, a B2B sales development and appointment setting agency. Companies always need pipeline, but they oftentimes don't want to hire SDRs internally. The whole process is risky and expensive. You've got hiring costs, onboarding, training, additional spend on your tech stack, a few months to ramp up. And with that being said, SDRs are a high turnover position, and the person you hire might not necessarily work out, so you need to start all over again. That's why companies outsource this. LevelUp Leads allocates a team of people, their tech stack, so you can onboard and launch your campaigns in about a week. They set qualified meetings in your calendar so your team has more selling opportunities. Visit levelupleads.io today to learn more. All right, now back to the show.
What's the plan? What's the plan for funding, raise, whatnot? And I will make sure that my CEO knows what I'm doing. So when there's a conversation happening with my boss and him, my CEO knows about my numbers, my boss knows about my numbers. So there's no discrepancy. If I'm speaking to my account executive, I made sure I'm making their life as easy as possible. So I'm not passing them any meeting just so that I could meet my numbers. I'm okay to sacrifice my number, but I want them to be happy, because when the time comes for me to become account executive, they are the one who will be asked about my feedback. So I think there's not just one thing, if I could say. I think these are just small little things which you have to do to make sure you're marketed well. I also started posting on LinkedIn. I think that was around the same time. I was teaching people, I remember my first video on LinkedIn 2017 was, how do you get hired at my company? It was simply that video. So I broke down everything which I knew about the role, and I just helped people. And I think that was the start of the career. I think, like I said, I was also the right place at the right time. So one of the leader quit at the same time when the position became available. So something, kind of a butterfly effect, I might say.
Now I want to shift gears here, but we were talking a little bit before we hit record. And, there's a lot of talk around AI and automation in the sales world. And a lot of people are debating, where does the human element land in all this, right? Because it's somewhere, right? It's important. In sales, people still want to buy from people, but they're using AI and automation in certain ways to make their life easier or do better research. Where do you think it currently stands? Where is it being misunderstood? And where do you think it's most important in sales as a whole?
I think when I think about this, and if you look around, there are a gazillion tools which are prevalent in sales right now, especially for the top of the funnel. That means they all are claiming that we are going to help your SDR teams fill pipeline. And all of them come with huge, massive claims of, we have the best AI, we have trained the best AI. And then you look around and you look at the SDR benchmarking report and you see how many companies are still not meeting quota. That means something is really not working. And there's a direct correlation that, either AI is great and people don't know how to use it. And that means, again, there's a huge gap in the way AI has been projected. Because everybody thought when AI came in, oh, this is going to be the holy grail we need. We will get this tool and it's going to solve the problem. And I'm pretty sure you and I both have bought dozens of products, who claimed massive, that it's going to solve the problem and did not. And eventually we realized that later. I mean, given that I'm building my own sales tech product, I speak to a lot of sellers, and I know where there might be a place for AI, where there might be a place for human judgment. And I think we are giving AI far more credit than it is due. And if you think about this today, if I make a clone of Rahul and I say I'm going to sell this for $10, probably nobody's going to buy it. But if I say I'm going to charge $50 for 30 minutes of my time, I'm sure there would be a lot of people who would going to buy it. Because one, there's an instinct belief that I am not AI, I'm a human being. And there is a belief that, human beings holds a better judgment against AI. I think there is a great place for AI. I'm not denying it. I use AI to the extent I don't even know how can I even do it. I just became like a diamond level user at Lovable. That should tell you how much time I spend in creating these websites and whatnot. For SDRs, if I think about this, we are kind of flooding them with tons of tools saying that, hey, use AI for automation, use AI to bring signals, use AI to reach out to the right people at the right time. But I think what we're not training them is how to use that human judgment. I'll give you a simple example. I think we were talking about this before we press record, that how human behavior has changed when it comes to purchase. So and some companies do acknowledge that, but I don't think so many companies have done any effort or made any effort to train the SDRs the same way. That, hey, because the buying behavior has changed and now you have to change your selling behavior. I see that even with sellers that has not changed, because they're asking the same sort of discovery questions, which are so obvious that you should not be asking, because your buyer is so evolved right now. If I get on a call with John who leads an SDR agency, I would have already done any kind of research I might have to do. I would have already looked at your G2, and forget G2. I would have probably left a query at ChatGPT, and in 30 minutes, I would have already have the best response as to who's the best agency based on my needs. So in that case, before I get on a call with John and John asked me, hey, what are your requirements? And, John asked me a very basic question, which was probably okay to ask in 2023. I already know that I'm already way ahead in my game. So we're not teaching SDRs right now to bridge that gap right now, is what I feel.
Yeah, I think buyers are more educated, or information's easier to access. I have had the experience more than once where I'm interested in a product or service. I'm required to do a discovery call when I thought it was the demo. And then they just ask me a bunch of questions. I answer them. Then I go to the actual demo and they re-ask the same questions, as if that first call never happened. So anyways, they're missing the mark there. What I think this boils down to, though, is training. And that's why I like the school that you have with the SDRs, is because they're getting that actual training. A lot of companies aren't giving SDRs the required training that they need. Also, when you say quotas aren't being met, I think they're not getting the right training, and they have quotas that are unrealistic, or unrealistic on how they're going to be met. So I think that's part of the issue right there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure few leaders probably take the time to explain how the quotas were even set up in the first place and how to go about meeting them. And some of them, like you said, are completely unrealistic just because they probably read it off a report, or probably somebody told them, this is the way numbers are done. Curious, I mean, since you run an agency, what are some of the things you see when it comes to setting up these quotas? Do you see companies have a fair understanding of how these are set?
So we're a little unique because we work with so many different companies, and we work off of we don't guarantee a certain number of meetings that we don't get involved in that in their internal metrics on how that's all works. So they don't share that stuff with us. We have goals that we set with each company that we try to hit in order to make the campaign and the partnership successful. The difficult thing there is that every company is different in terms of one company may need one meeting a week and they're very happy with that. And another company may need one meeting a day. And so it's a matter of, in the sales process, understanding their sales cycle, their deal size, close rate. And so you kind of once you get that information, you can back out, okay, how many meetings do you need in a given week or month? And you can kind of build that out together on how this could all make sense. But we're not held to a certain quota, and we don't know what the internal quota is. Now, What is important though is that companies will share they have a revenue goal, and we can ask them, okay, this initiative hiring us to run these outbound campaigns for you, what percentage are you assuming this will generate towards that goal? So we can have a sense, are they relying on us 100%, or is it just 10%? So we know where we land in the big picture of them trying to meet their goal.
Makes sense. And this also allows you to position yourself for the long term as well, if they are completely banking on you versus bringing you as a additional quota.
I mean, if we figure some of that stuff out, we can say we're generating X amount of pipeline for you every month, right? Given your average deal size, right? So that you can do that. It's hard. Sales is a little bit out of our control. At the end of the day, it matters. So we're not in control of the sale, but at the end of the day, if a board or some C-level execs making a decision, they're going to look to see if ROI is coming from the campaign. So it matters, but we only have so much control. The quality of the meeting and how many meetings are important.
Makes sense.
I was at a conference last year, and one of the big topics was SDRs and business acumen, and how that's becoming more and more important. A lot of SDRs historically have come out of school, don't have that much working experience. They're in the role, but they don't have a whole lot of business acumen. And so a lot of discussions was how that's becoming more and more important in an SDR role, being able to talk to different seniority levels. What have you seen in terms of the people that go through your program, and how important do you think that is in today's SDR world?
Like immensely. I just got off a phone, before the podcast with a guy who was asking me the same thing. Hey, are you going to teach me about business? I said, how else will I teach you about business? How else will I teach you about messaging if I can't teach you about business? Of course, this guy had some business knowledge from the B2C world where he's selling different courses and whatnot. And when I think about my journey, I think I kind of learned all about business acumen just by observing and just by doing things. And I come with no business background, no MBA, no degree in sales or anything. If I think about when I first got into business, I had no idea how it's done. But I think the fun part about running a services business is that you have to build a pipeline at all times. There's no resting period. There is I'm sure you know that, right? So in case of SaaS, I can still take a sigh of relief saying that, hey, I'm not going to work in December because I have recurring revenue coming in. And I think that has given me that pressure, enough inbuilt pressure where I have to research the business like my life depends on it. So the way I kind of run all my cohorts based on first principles, where I break things down to a level where a five-year-old can understand it. And then we have built our own custom GPTs for various plays where if I put in John's company into the GPT, it will tell me how John makes money, the kind of companies he target, the customers who all should be the ICP, what should he target next and whatnot. So we are able to show them the manual way. And while we are showing them the manual way, I will have to take them to John's website, show them how am I going to do this if there was no AI today, and then show them the AI way. That way they understand if tomorrow AI stops working, they should be able to still perform. So yeah, I don't think so. Today, if I'm training an SDR without business acumen, they're going to last very long.
The reality is a lot of people may not have that. So it's like, how do you go about teaching them? How over time, if they don't have the work experience, how can they learn in some type of training process? to get a better sense on how things work within a given role or department or company. A company of 3,000 employees is going to operate different than a company of 50 employees, right? In decision making.
I think the way we start is we take the simplest of the simplest companies first, because I want them to be comfortable with understanding how businesses operate. So I can start with as simple as even helping them understand how School of SDR operates, as an example. Funny thing, to explain the concept of ICP, I take B2C example. So I bring up my old iPod, I have an MP3 player, which I got as a gift recently. And I asked them, hey, you know what, in the world of Spotify today, who would need this MP3 player? I want you to spend 5 minutes, write down who would you reach out to? How would you sell this? How would you build a pipeline of people who are interested in buying this? So that's how we try to kind of make it engaging, at the same time, kind of make them think, because if they cannot think around this, then I think explaining them a complicated cybersecurity product would be impossible. So we start with simple product, and then as the week progresses, we start making it you can't sell LinkedIn anymore. You can't sell a sales tech product anymore. So you have to sell cybersecurity. You have to sell like the SOC 2 compliance software. So that's how we kind of grow from there.
And one last question for you that I had lined up is, looking at your LinkedIn, I see several things you've started, companies or the School of SDR. Where did you get that entrepreneurial spirit? Like when did you kind of feel like, all right, I'm ready to start my own business and get out of, working for a company as a W-2 employee?
Yeah, I think there's only one person who's probably asked me that. And I remember once I started my business, someone in my family said that nobody believed that I could even start it, and nobody thought, I could actually start with my own business. I think I'd like to definitely credit my co-founder, because I think ever since I started talking to him, he had this whole entrepreneurial drive, and he has been a co-founder for various companies. And he's the one who actually started School of SDR in the earlier shape or form it was. But when I came in, I wanted to give it my flavor, and I kind of changed the whole branding and brought in my own flavor. When I first coached, I remember distinctly, I think it was 3 years ago, January in Portland. It was snowing outside. It was like 10 inches of snow. And I'm teaching this first cohort of mine, and I loved it. And I think when I first started teaching, I'm like, oh, this is all I wanted to do all my life. I could do this for hours and hours and hours without even thinking about it. I could teach this in my sleep. So the whole idea behind, I think, starting the business was, one, I want to do it. Second, I think as a personality I am, John, I don't think so I could have lasted in a lot of companies for very long. I'm a very dominant personality. That's who I am. I kind of try to take lead. I don't need a lot of direction. But if you tell me, Rahul, this is supposed to be done, I'll figure it out my way. And I have a certain way of working, and not everybody can even work with me, if I'm being super transparent. And I realize, business... Sorry?
It was meant to be.
Yeah, it was meant to be. I think it was a matter of time. Most people were not surprised, except my family, that I wanted to start it. And one day, I think my co-founder and I said, this is it. We had planned to start, both go full time like 7 months later, but it kind of happened 7 months earlier. And when it happened, it just kind of felt natural. I felt like everything was aligned, and we had the best first year. And then second year was even better. Then we're running in the third year, and we're hoping that this will be like the biggest one. So yeah, it kind of just comes naturally. I don't know I ever planned for it. I'm very much against studying MBA and going to B school for 2 years just to learn this. I think the best way to learn this is learning on your own. As a matter of fact, I remember, I have my different versions on it, but I'm very strongly kind of oppose the B schools, because I believe if I have to spend, let's say, even $50,000 on a B school, I would rather find people like Scott Lees, and I say, Scott, I'm going to give you $50,000 and you have to train me 1 hour. I'm going to be 101. I think I will learn way more with Scott, or anybody else for that matter, than going to a B school.
I agree with you. I studied marketing in college, and I can't say I learned a whole lot, like what I'm using in today's world in my work. I learned on the job. I didn't learn in school.
Yeah, I think people know you for your work, which you're doing right now, versus what you studied. I mean, I'm sure, B school may have some place, unless you went to Harvard or Oxford, I don't know, and maybe made some incredible connection, which you could not make otherwise. Or probably, I don't know, I wanted to go to B school for the fun of it and not for the studying, for sure.
I had a great time. It was good. So Rahul, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit about SDRs and your background. I feel like we could have gone at least for another 30 minutes, but I wanted to wrap things up here. For those listening, where is the best place for people to find you?
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn almost 24/7.
That's the best place to reach out. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And until next time.
I loved it. Thank you so much for hosting me, John.